This video is made possible by donations to the United States Lighthouse Society from people like you. Thank you for coming, and again, wherever you are, I hope you're out of harm's way. I know where Jeff and Margie and Cassandra are in Washington State. It's pretty hazy and orange today, right, Jeff?
Very much so.
Yeah. So I hope that improves soon for everybody. And this is our 8th tour retrospective program. Hard to believe we've done 8 of these now. For those who don't know, I'm Jeremy Dontremont. I'm the historian for the U.S. Lighthouse Society, host of the Society's podcast, Lighthearted. Jeff Gales, who most of you know, is the executive director of the U.S. Lighthouse Society. Hi, Jeff. After the tour presentation, Jeff will help facilitate the question and answer portion of the program. We will take questions in the chat. Most of you, I'm sure, know you can use the chat in Zoom, but we'll also take questions verbally at the end. We'll explain that when we get to it. If you've done these events before, you know the drill. As I said, there's a chat feature in Zoom. If you click on chat at the bottom of your screen, a box should open up. I see there's already 11 messages in there. I just realized something, Jeff. I didn't get a map for this tour. Do you have a map, or do we have a map that we can post? Usually we do that.
Yeah, I'll make sure to get that, and I'll send it to you so you can post it in the chat.
Okay, excellent. That just
if you go to your if everybody looks at the last email announcing the presentation, the map, link to the map is there as well.
Okay, right. Okay, I can access it that way too. So okay. Once when Margie and Cassandra start the presentation, I will access the map and I will post it in the chat for people who don't have it. And that way, if you want to grab the map and look at it on your computer or print it out or whatever, you can do that. So as I was saying, there's the chat in Zoom. You click on chat and you'll get a chat window, and a lot of people are already using it. And you can chat with everybody at once. It says to everyone, or you can choose a person down the bottom. You can choose a person if you want to message somebody individually. Many of you have taken part in United States Lighthouse Society tours over the years. I know there's a lot of people here who have done that. For people who aren't familiar with the tours, it's important to know that proceeds from the tours go to the Society's mission of supporting lighthouse preservation and education. Also, when you take a Society tour, you often get access to lighthouses that aren't otherwise open to the public. I know that was true in New Zealand. And finally, the tours are not just about lighthouses. They're designed to give a better understanding of the culture and communities where the lighthouses are located. And I know you're going to see that in today's presentation. In late June, we had part 1 of the New Zealand tour, covered the North Island. Today, we're going to learn about the lighthouses of New Zealand's South Island. I think somebody may have unmuted themselves. So again, everybody, make sure your microphone is muted. You should have been automatically muted when you came into the event. So please do not unmute yourselves. Thank you. Let's see. Somebody's unmuted there. Jeff, maybe you can find that if there still are.
Well,
so yeah. Again, we're going to talk about the South Island of New Zealand today. Just a little bit about New Zealand before we start. New Zealand, of course, is a small island nation in the southwestern Pacific Ocean. It's about 1,000 miles long from north to south, and it's made up of the North and South Islands and a number of smaller islands. And the 2 main islands are divided by Cook Strait. And a little bit about the South Island. It's also officially named, and I'm going to massacre this, but Te Waipunamu, something to that effect. The South Island is bound in the north by Cook Strait, to the west by the Tasman Sea, and to the south and east by the Pacific Ocean. The South Island is renowned for its mountains, lakes, and glaciers. The Southern Alps are home to 12,000-foot-high Aoraki Mount Cook, the highest mountain in New Zealand. The North Island is smaller, but has a larger population than the South Island. The South Island is home to 23% of New Zealand's 4.9 million inhabitants. About 10% of the population are the indigenous Maori. The island covers about 58,000 square miles, making it the world's 12th largest island. Maritime New Zealand owns and maintains the lighthouses and beacons that are outside harbor limits in New Zealand. Maritime New Zealand has 23 lighthouses and 75 minor light beacons. There are also some lighthouses that are controlled by the local harbor authorities. All the lighthouses in New Zealand were de-staffed by 1990, and all the lights are now fully automatic. There is normally no access inside the lighthouse towers, and getting access is a special privilege, and you'll hear about that today. So let me introduce our guides for today. The Rowland family. I think Jerry is not joining us today, but let me just mention that Jerry Rowland is retired Navy and retired Marina Port Manager who's been volunteering for the Society since 2017, and he's been very involved in planning and leading the tours since then. He's actually planned all the Society's tours since then. Margie, his wife, will be presenting today, is retired from Puget Sound Naval Shipyard, where she was superintendent of electricians and electronics and project manager. She has helped Jerry with planning the tours the last couple of years and has been co-tour leader for eight tours. Their granddaughter, Cassandra Rowland, has worked for the U.S. Lighthouse Society for the last 6 years at their offices at the Point No Point Light Station in Hansville, Washington, performing administrative office duties. She has helped lead 5 tours, including a main tour I was part of a couple of years ago. So I think that about covers it, and I'm going to turn things over to Margie and Cassandra at this point.
All right, I guess it's time to share my screen and get on with presentation. Where'd you put it?
Here we go.
Okay. All right, as I stated on the North Island presentation, the way the people in New Zealand greet is the word kia ora. So on the count of 3, I'd like you all to say that. 1, 2, 3. Kia ora. And that makes me feel like we're in New Zealand. So here's the map of the South Island. What we did, the lighthouses we saw there. And as those that were with us on the North Island tour, we're in Wellington. And as Jeremy already said, in order to get from the North Island to the South Island, we've got to cross the Cook Strait. So this is how you do it. They have a ferry system. Luckily, the bus driver we had recommended that we order a luggage pickup at the hotel, so we didn't have to carry our bags on board. So if you're ever there, I recommend you take advantage of that kind of service. Otherwise, you have to go through the same type of thing you do in the airports where they check your luggage, and it's more cumbersome. It worked out very well. So here is an aerial view of Cook Strait, and Wellington is up over here, and we have to come around and land in Picton. And this is kind of a map of how the ferry goes. Now, Cook Strait funnels all the westerly winds right up to make them northerly, so it's quite turbulent in there. And sometimes the ferry sailings are very rough. We had a very nice sailing. but it is regarded as one of the most dangerous and unpredictable waters in the world. This is a view from the ferry, and that little dot you see right here is the Akaroa Lighthouse, which is the leaning lighthouse in Wellington we talked about at the North Island presentation. We went from Picton to Blenheim right away so that we could get closer to our location for our next lighthouse the following day. We got there before noon, so we took advantage of touring the city, and they have beautiful city park, and it's just a very nice city. We had our lunch and dinners there. So the next morning, off to our first lighthouse in South Island, which was our 19th for the tour, Cape Campbell Lighthouse. And I wanted to show you that Highway 1 is the main road we came off of, but once we got off of that road, you can see how long and curvy and quite a distance and quite a challenge. So as a result, our bus could not make this road trip. We got another tour company to provide a four-wheel drive bus that will took the group out to it. And here it is. There's the bus driver and Jerry. This is kind of an idea of what kind of terrain we were looking at. And here's a switchback right here. So it's and here's where we're coming into the lighthouse. It does go along the Pacific Ocean for a while. And we finally get there. And it is known as the Te Karakara by the local Maori, but it was named by Captain Cook, named for the Admiral John Campbell. This is the lighthouse that was used in The Light Between Oceans, that movie. If you haven't seen it, go see it. The movie company searched all over for the right lighthouse, and in the movie it's supposed to be a lighthouse on an island off of Australia, but when they saw this lighthouse they said this is perfect for our movie, and they set everything up to make it look like it was an old-time lighthouse. They put the fresnel lens back up in the tower, they built a pier, and they really enhanced the place for the movie. This gives you an idea of the size of the tower, because here's a bunch of little people down here at the bottom.
You know, you just go into the mail and get charged that way. Yeah, I know.
So the history of this lighthouse is between 1845 and 1947, 18 ships were wrecked with 43 lives lost. The first light was built in 1870, and originally they had 3 keepers there, 2 married and 1 single. In order to get their supplies locally, they traveled by horse and carriage, but their big supplies came from the sea. Every 3 months, they were barged in. West of the lighthouse buildings is a grave of the lighthouse keeper's daughter, Rose Anna McGahee, who died in October 1887 at 7 months old, and it's still, the gravesite is still there. So the first lighthouse was built from wood in 1 August 1870, but 28 years later it showed signs of decay, so they built a steel structure out of 100 curved sections. They first erected it at the foundry to make sure that it fit well, and then it was disassembled and shipped to the Cape in 1903. It took 5 days to transport from the boats by an 8-horse team and wagon, but it was finally lit October 1905. At first it was white, but they decided, because of the surrounding white cliffs that it needed to have more pronunciation, and they made it black with stripes. It was converted to electricity in 1938. And then they got mainland power in 1960. In November 2003, the fresnel lens was replaced with an automatic beacon, backup battery power. In 2016, they had an earthquake, 7.8 magnitude earthquake, but the lighthouse stood and is still in good shape today. This is the fresnel lens that was put down in the bottom of the lighthouse after the movie. The ranch owner that owns the ranch before you get to Cape Campbell, they own all that territory before you get to the lighthouse, and they met us there. And their son said he was very sad to see this fresnel lens be put back out of operation because it looked very beautiful rotating against the surrounding cliffs. But now it's back to its beacon instead of this. But the lens is there sitting at the bottom of the lighthouse. And there's those cliffs I was talking about. That's the view to the west. We did not get to climb this lighthouse, but because the ranchers don't own the lighthouse, the New Zealand Maritime Authority do, so we didn't get to climb this one. But this is the view of those cliffs I was talking about, and they're very white, sandy. The house right here was also used in that movie, and it's still standing. It is the original, one of the original Keeper's lighthouses. And like I said, the ranch owners, the Peters, met us. They provided us with a wonderful lunch. They also had one of their sheds, one of their outbuildings, with information about the lighthouse and the movie. It was very warm welcome and one of the highlights of this tour. So here's a sample of the kind of information they have in their outbuilding of the lighthouse history and the shipwrecks. Very informative. So our group took a picture at Cape Campbell. By the way, this is Jerry's favorite lighthouse. One of the reasons being it's such an adventure to get there, and the other because it's such a beautiful site, beautiful lighthouse. All right. So now we have to get from our lighthouse to Christchurch, and you can see it's a long ways. There are long distances between the lighthouses. So we had to stop. We stopped at Kaikora. They had a public restroom there, and we took advantage of some of the local shops.
Kaikora had been devastated by the 2016 earthquake. So a lot of the shops were out of they were built out of container ship pieces. What are they called? The
Connex boxes.
Yeah, the Connex boxes.
So when we arrived in Christchurch, we let the group go for dinner, and this is a typical street in Christchurch, and you'll see the trolley tracks there. They have a trolley that runs around all the town. Just outside of our hotel was the Christchurch Cathedral, and the picture on the right is what it looks like today. The original cathedral on the left is what it looked like before the earthquake of 2011. Quite a big difference. And the last I heard, they had finally decided to restore it. But it's going to be quite an undertaking. This building really was devastated by that earthquake.
They got hit by 2 earthquakes within a 5-year period that were pretty high magnitude.
All right, so the next morning, we went to Akaroa Lighthouse, a little distance from Christchurch. And that's the picture of the lighthouse from Akaroa City. You have to take a little walk to get up to it. It was originally on Akaroa Head, but in August 2nd, 1980, a group of dedicated locals decided to move it. And they have quite a story to go along with that. They moved it without permission. And as they said, sometimes it's easier to get forgiveness than permission. So they just took it upon themselves to move the lighthouse because it was in danger of going to be destroyed. This plaque is on the side of the lighthouse that talks about that move. And the name of the group is the Akaroa Lighthouse Preservation Society. I wanted to show you where they had to move it from. This is Akaroa Head, where the lighthouse was. They had to go 6 miles, and in 1980, this road was hardly developed, and they moved it right to there. In order to move it, they had to take it apart in 3 sections, and it was slow going, but they got it there and put it all back together. This is part of the group that met us there. They gave us a nice talk. Part of the group was some of the original people that helped move the lighthouse. The person on the right, Ben Hutchinson, has a book out talking about that move and about the lighthouse. They wound the clock works for us so we could watch that because it's operational. This is the lens, beautiful lens. They keep it well polished and preserved. And it's a second order dioptric holophoto flashing light every 10 seconds. They lit the light for us. They turned it on.
Yeah, I had wandered up the road and to check out some of the other views up that way, and I turned around and came back and noticed that they lit it for us. So I made sure to snap a few pictures of that.
This is just an idea of the walk we had to do to get there. And this is a panoramic view to the north.
From the lantern room.
From the lantern room. Yeah, we got to climb this month. Akaroa City, it was a really nice little city, as you can see. We didn't get to stay as long as we wanted to. I think in the future we will change the itinerary a bit to allow for time in this little city. But we were on our way to visit the International Antarctic Centre. Here they put you in some foul weather gear and put you in a room where you get to see how cold it is. They have a temperature over here so you know how cold it is. They even make a big blow like a gale is coming through there to make you even colder. It was an interesting experience. And they had the penguins. Got to see a bunch of penguins there. And we got to watch a 4D movie.
Now, 4D means that it has effects. Like in the particular movie we saw, it decided to spray us with water.
Yeah. The chair shakes, the water gets sprayed on you. It's misty, but it's still, that's the effect that you're going to have.
Yes, and it's kind of shocking when it suddenly goes in your face when something splashes in the water. So.
And then we got to ride on an Antarctic vehicle, and this is our group in one of the vehicles. Very rough going. They have an obstacle course in the back that they take it over, and I would not recommend it for anybody that might have a bad back problem. It really is a rough ride. Shakes you all over. When we got back to Christchurch, we did get on one of those trolleys for a city tour, and we had snacks and drinks. It was a very nice tour. All right, the next day, we're off to Jack's Point Lighthouse, number 21. Again, it's a little ways down there. So we stopped at Timaru City for a rest stop. And on the way in, we saw this little lighthouse. Why it wasn't on our itinerary, we're not sure. But we did get to see it coming in, and we yelled at the bus driver, "Hey, turn around, we want to see this." Well, because of some road construction and paths, he could not turn around. So we just got a glimpse of it, but it will be on the itinerary for the next one. Then we arrived at Jack's Point Lighthouse, or Tuhawaiki Point Lighthouse. And it's a 2.5 mile to get to this jewel. It is named after a Maori chief, Jack Tahawiki. It was built in 1903, and the harbor lights were not as effective as they wanted them, so they built this to help out, and it was automated in 1930. I will say that some of us on the tour that are challenged in walking did make the trek all the way out there. It was a beautiful walk, but it was trying for us. This is the sign that tells you about it.
Yeah, that 15 minutes, it's sort of true if it was flat. And it's not a flat walkway.
No, and it took us all more than 15 minutes.
Yeah, all of us.
Yeah. To give you an idea of the size, that's Darlene Chisholm standing in front of the lighthouse. And the walk was beautiful. There's lots of flora and fauna on the walk. And it's right next to the Pacific Ocean. In fact, some of the group decided that they didn't want to walk back on the trail, and they climbed down the cliff and walked by the ocean to get back.
It was a very rocky beach. Very, very rocky. It was not sandy at all.
Okay, now we're headed off to Lighthouse 22, and again, we had some distance to go through. So we went by Oamaru City, that has buildings made of limestone. Very unique city. We didn't plan on a stop there, but I think in future itineraries we will, because it has very unusual architecture. But we did stop at the Morekai Boulders. We stopped there for lunch. You can see our group out there walking around them. And this is what they look like up close. The Morekai Boulders are a sedimentary rock that has a space between them filled with minerals, which acted like cement. And the degree of this cementation varies from inside it's weak and outside it's very strong.
And inside, some of them have cracked open, and inside of them they found all sorts of different creatures that have gotten stuck in the cement-like substance.
They think they age them at 4 million years old. And there's Cassandra by one of the boulders, give you an idea of how big they are. So after lunch, we head on to Katiki Point Lighthouse, number 22. And Katiki Point is also a historic reserve. And they're asking you not to use flash photography for the animals that are there, and no food. But this is the lighthouse that is there. Still has a beautiful lens there. It's also called, oops, no, back, stop. Sorry, it's called another Maori name. It began in 1876 because of bad weather. In fact, it was a lightning storm. It struck this lighthouse, and it shook the tower so bad that the lamp glass was broken. And then they had to replace that. So the tower didn't get lit until 1878. Morekai Lighthouse, it's known as the Morekai Lighthouse. But there was a walking trail that you could walk down to see some seals and a yellow-eyed penguin. So there is the yellow-eyed penguin, and he was out there posing for everybody. Everybody got some really good shots of him. And down below on the beach, there was a lot of seals.
Yeah, you can only kind of see the tail end of one of them at the tip of this particular picture, but they were down there.
And then we went to Dunedin to do an overnight. We got there just about dinner time, so we didn't have a whole lot of time to do visiting there. This is another place that I wish we had more time to visit. This hotel, if you're ever in Dunedin, stay at this hotel. They have washers and dryers in the hotel, in your room, and they supply the soap. And it was just a wonderful experience. We all started our loads of laundry before we went to dinner and then finished up when we came back. It was wonderful to have that option. This was on our way to dinner. We went to a local brewery, and this courtyard had this structure, very unique structure. And all through the town, they have penguins. You know, some towns have cows, some have dolphins. This one has penguins.
What was interesting was each of the penguins was created for one of the founders for the city. So one of them would be for the general store, another one was for the postmaster, and they're everywhere. There was dozens of them that you can go and see.
All right. Next morning, we went to Tairora Head Lighthouse. And at Tairora Head is the Royal Albatross Center. And on the trail up to the viewing platform to see the albatrosses, there is the Tairora Head Jail. Not much to look at, but it was a jail in the rock in the hill. And this is from the viewing room. And this, some of our folks got to see, some didn't, because we went up in groups. But there is a baby albatross underneath its mom. They got to see from the viewing room. That is the Tairora Head Lighthouse from the land. It's a stone structure. It was first lit in 1864, and the locals call it Te Matanga Tairoa, named after a 19th century Maori chief. And this is from the water. After we were done with the center, we got on a boat and went out in the waters, and then we got to take lots of pictures of Tairora Head. And in some pictures, it looks like the tower is attached to the building, but you can see from this that it is not. But it is very picturesque. We've got lots of pictures here we're sharing with you. There it is from the water.
And down on the rocks is more seals.
Another close-up. Another angle. All right, then on to number 24, Nugget Point Lighthouse. If you can see where we are,
We started here.
we start at the parking, and then we take a walk, it says 15 minutes, out to the point where the lighthouse is. Halfway there is this sign.
Ironically enough, a lot of people missed this sign. It was off to the side, but it was commenting that they didn't want us to go any further. We weren't the only group that ignored this sign.
Yeah, so you risk serious injury or death. Yeah, and everybody just walked on by it, so. And this is why they walked on by. Look at this lighthouse out on the point of this rock. It was a 7/10 of a mile walk. And like I said, it takes about 15 minutes. This light was first lit in 1870, automated in 1989. And as of May 2020, it is now solarized. And the reason they call it a Nugget Point is because of the rock formations down below. The Maori name for this point is Takata. In fact, those little nuggets down there, when Captain Cook saw them, he called them nuggets of gold. And you can see the lens is still in the lighthouse, but there is a gate all around it. We couldn't get real close to it. So from there, we went to Invercargill, which is the southernmost city on the South Island. But being this close to the South Pole, it was pretty cold there, even in February, which is like our August. This is the hotel we stayed at, and all of our rooms were all on the same level. There was no elevators, which I thought was unusual. And we ate in one of the restaurants there in the building. And when we were asked to order dessert, brownie was on the menu. And so a lot of us said, oh yeah, sure, we'll have a brownie. This is what we got. This is one order of brownie.
And they were about this, each brownie was about the size of a finger. So they weren't tiny at all.
Much more than we expected. Next morning, we went to our last lighthouse, Wiapapa Lighthouse. It's right on the water. It's built in response to the wreck of a passenger steamer in 1881 with a loss of 131 lives. There was only 2 wooden lighthouses built in New Zealand, and the other one is no longer exists. So this is the last wooden lighthouse in New Zealand. And it was lit in January 1884, automated and keepers withdrawn in 1975, and solar powered in 1988. It now has a new LED beacon as of 2008. And in 2008, the restoration work ensured it was weatherproof and secure from vandalism. There was no vandalism on it in 2019, so they must have done something. I'd like to know what that is.
Agreed.
So these are all different views. We walk around the lighthouse and you can see the different views of the Wiapapa Lighthouse. It was a nice walk, nice area. And there was a seal on the beach there to greet us. And he even poked up his head and said hi to us. And then we went to Tainau. We went there for lunch. So this little city is a tourist city for sure, but is also right on the Tainau Lake. And this pier, we caught a boat to go see the glowworm caves. Now, this is not a picture that any of us took because we were not allowed to take cameras into the glowworm caves. So this just gives you an idea, though. We get on a boat. Once we hike up quite a ways, we get on a boat and we go in some water and we get to see the glowworms doing their thing. Once we left there, we went to Queenstown. And Queenstown is known as the adventure capital of the world, and for a good reason. The next day, we were scheduled to go on the TSS Earnslaw to the Walter Peak Farm that has lots of farm life, and they serve a meal, which I hear is a wonderful meal. But when we got there to get on, the boat was broken. There was some part that was not working, so they canceled our trip.
After letting us wait for an hour and a half in the sun.
Yeah. So now some of our members were smart and went back later for the dinner cruise. The boat was fixed. They got on and they got to go experience this. But the rest of us weren't smart enough to think about that. But while in that courtyard, there was statues of a kiwi. This is while we were waiting for the Earnslaw. Also, they talked about the extinct moa, which was a forerunner of the kiwi, which was 9 feet tall. And this is the statue they had of it as well.
I thought it was ironic that the Kiwi and the Moa were about the same size when it came to statues, even though the Moa's was much, much larger.
Yeah. So the next day, some folks took the optional Doubtful Sound cruise, which is on a fjord. It is a fjord. And as you can see, there's lots of waterfalls, lots of wildlife, marine life. It was, I'm being told, a great trip.
Yes, it was. It started out cloudy, but by the end of it, it was very sunny. It was kind of ironic. The boat captain kept telling us, by the end of this trip, you're going to get sick and tired of hearing about waterfalls. And he was right. After the 40 or 50th one, we were kind of done with it.
Then the next day, we had people go on the Shotover jets, on the Shotover River. And this is our group, part of our group. They divided us into different groups. And this trip is quite exciting. We have a little video that we can show you at the end so that you get an idea of what it's like. Then came our farewell dinner at the Skyline Gondola restaurant. You can see that it's built on the side of a hill or a mountain. And it's called the Gondola Restaurant because you have to ride a gondola to get to the restaurant. And this is the kind of view you get while you're eating dinner there. Beautiful. It is a large buffet. Almost any kind of meal or cuisine that you would want is there. And this is just the dessert section, my favorite section, of course. Very large buffet. And then there was other adventures that some people did. Wasn't necessarily on the tour, but it was offered at Queenstown, and that's exactly why it's called the adventure capital of the world. There was zip lines. There was cliff parachuting. One of our members took advantage of that. There was helicopter rides to local glacier. And at the bottom of the gondola, there was a bird exhibit.
Yeah, it was a bird sanctuary, and it had kiwis in it, which is the national bird.
And you don't normally get to see kiwis because they only come out at night, but they had it in a dark enclosure so that you were able to see them.
Unfortunately, you weren't allowed to take any pictures of them, and any pictures you did get of them were too dark because you couldn't put on a flash. So while Margie was otherwise occupied, I drug Jerry on an adventure and made him go ziplining with me. So there's him on a zip line, and this particular zip line was themed after the Lord of the Rings because it was in one of the areas where the Lord of the Rings, the movies, were shot. And we, of course, got to pass over Orc Gorge. And sticking with that theme, they decided to build and leave an orc at the bottom of the gorge.
This guy didn't make it, he lost it.
There was quite a few jokes about that. This is another thing I drug Jerry on. We went on a helicopter to the glacier. I don't think we're in this picture. We're actually behind. He's next to me on this. We're at the top of the glacier snapping a picture down.
But that's part of the group that went.
Yeah. And that's Cousin Sally, and again, me, taking another one of my family members on an adventure. The luge was at above the Skyline restaurant on the mountain. And so we did a few luge rides.
And that was about it for the tour. The next day, we took a flight from Queenstown to Auckland and then to home. Quite a journey. Did you want to show the video?
Okay. Did you want to show that video?
Yes.
Hold on, I'm going to share screen again.
Share screen.
Hit the share over there.
Share.
Okay, then hit this down here.
This one? I'll let you do it. I'm confused. Oh.
This is the shot over, and it is our group that is on this video. And it just shows you some of the annex that they do and how close they get to the rocks.
And they have cameras all over, both above and, of course, below. And you do get wet.
And they figured that they go about 60 miles an hour. Pretty exciting. It's a 4-minute video, so we're going to stop it there. You guys get the idea.
One of their favorite motions is to do a 360 turn on. So, and they would spin you around, but they did that in the open water when they weren't trying to see your life flash before your eyes as you're getting within a meter of the rocks.
Wow, that looks great. By the way, the video playback doesn't always work that great in Zoom, so that the picture was jerky. I don't know if it was for everybody, but we still got the idea. That's for sure.
Okay.
So thank you, Cassandra and Margie. That was great. Another excellent presentation.
Oh, I just love this. This tour was wonderful.
I can see that. Was it your favorite tour that you've done?
Well, New Zealand is my favorite international tour I've done, but yep. I've got some domestics that are right up there too. So.
Okay, so we're gonna open it up for questions at this point. I don't think anybody's asked any questions in the chat, but if you'd like to, you can do it that way, or you can ask questions verbally by digitally raising your hand and we'll call on you. So if you go to participants and click on that, you should see, it should bring up an option to raise your hand. And I always get mixed up on this because my host controls are different, so I can't see that. But Jeff, clarify if there's more that should be said about that. Well, Jeff, I think you're muted.
Yeah, they just need to open up the participants list, and then on the bottom right-hand side will be the raise hand button.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So everybody, if you just to repeat that, if you click on participants, over on the participants list at the bottom, you should see a raise hand option. So if you want to ask a question verbally to Margie, Cassandra, or Jeff, or me, go ahead and raise your hand, or you can post a question in the chat. Didn't realize the kiwi was a bird. It's also a fruit.
Yes, it is. And they have all sorts of different types. It's not just green. They have a gold one as well. That's actually my favorite.
And do they mostly come from New Zealand? Is that
yes.
fruit? Is that what? Okay.
New Zealand bird. And they call themselves kiwis.
Right.
Yes.
A person from New Zealand is a kiwi, definitely. Thank you for sharing your photos and time. Essential grocery worker here and obsessed with lighthouses. Thanks for cheering up my day and take good care. Thank you for that message. Skip Sherwood, here's a question, or it's more of a command from Skip Sherwood, who's another one of the tour leaders. Skip says, tell us about the food.
Oh man, the food was it was great. One of my favorite meals happened to be in Auckland. It was the welcome dinner night. at least in terms of proportions, that was probably the best time. It was a 4-course meal where they came out with small different tastes. And then there was, all throughout, there was good food, but lots of it.
Food.
That's what I
Was
like.
there any particular dish that they served a lot of?
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Most definitely.
Like
You
what?
would, you think American sizes are big. Theirs were just as, if not more so.
No, not the size. What actually did you eat? What were they
Oh,
serving?
goodness. A little bit of everything. We had different pies. They were,
We had lamb.
we had lamb.
We had some steak and chicken and, of course, lots of fish. Fish and chips is one of their big deals.
Yep, and they were always good. Let's see here. They had some more eclectic pieces. Like there was sushi at the welcome dinner that we had. It was really good. It was fresh. Yes, I ate that. You did not. They had lots of different styles of soups. A lot of them were, there was a pumpkin-based soup, a couple other odds and ends that came about.
So I'll give you a break here. There's 2 other questions. So the one says here, what do you offer the North and South tours of New Zealand back to back?
Yes, they were all one tour.
Okay. And then what's the official language of New Zealand? Do they also speak English?
So the official language is English, but it's blended with the Maori language. So that's almost considered a second official language, as you'll find signs that have the Maori words right next to the English words. Also find places where the Maori words have taken over the English words. So there's only the Maori word.
That is one thing I like about New Zealand. They have adopted their indigenous people, or not really adopted them. They include them as their residents. They don't separate them from the rest of the civilization.
No, it's just all become one blend in one culture.
Now, I do see that there are some people on that were there. If they want to jump in and say anything about the food that was served, it's a couple of wineries. We did a brewery. It was all very good food.
So yeah, I know there must be people here who are on the tour. I don't know if they're going to want to add anything. If they do, they can raise their hands. We do have a question. H. Geiford Stever or Stever, let me ask you to unmute yourself. You can go ahead and you should be able to unmute yourself and you can ask your question.
Well, it's not a question, but I can't agree with Marjorie and Cassandra anymore about how beautiful New Zealand is. It's an unbelievable country. I was there 2012, right before I met Marjorie and Cassandra, which they probably forgot, on the Australia tour.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
We met in the Australia tour. I did New Zealand before I flew over to Australia. But behind me is Mount Cook.
Yes. Yep.
Which I took from a helicopter ride up to the Robinson Glacier. And it's an unbelievably beautiful country. So it's great to see you both again.
Yes, you too.
You too.
Okay, thank you. And I think we have maybe another question or two in the chat. Is there Sally says, is there a way to see the Northern Island tour? I missed it when you did it live. Yes, all the previous tour retrospective programs we've done are in a couple of places online. You can see them on the US Lighthouse Society website. There's a page that lists them. If you have trouble finding it, just go in the search box and click and search for tour retrospective or something like that. They're also on YouTube, on the US Lighthouse Society YouTube channel. If you get on YouTube and search for USLHS, you'll find a lot of videos, including all the tour retrospective programs, including the first New Zealand one. And this program also will be posted both on YouTube and on the USLHS website within a few days. So if you came in late or want to see it again, it will be posted very soon.
If you're looking at the YouTube page or the Society website, Jeremy's been posting these amazing lighthouse video shorts, which are, usually 4 to 5 minutes long, history of various lighthouses and lighthouse keepers, and they're absolutely amazing. So if you get a chance, look at those.
Thank you, Jeff. Roughly, what was the cost to join in a tour like this one of New Zealand? That's a question.
I answered that on the chat, Jeremy.
Oh, did you? Okay, so that's, we don't need to.
And I did the next one.
Within the country, yes, but not to the country. So I think we've caught up on the chat, and I don't see any hands raised. Is there anybody who was on the tour who's here who'd like to add anything about what the experience was like? Oh, here's a question from Al King, our friend Al King.
Hey, Al.
Yeah, hi Al. Question for Jeff. How did the Michigan tour do? Any special steps due to COVID-19?
Yeah, I mean, the tour operated fine, and everybody had their temperatures taken. They wore masks and did the social distancing that was necessary. The only COVID-19 last minute change was that the hotel they were staying at in Detroit decided everybody had to have their welcome dinner in their rooms. So that wasn't really a nice social evening, but that's the way it goes. But for the most part, the tour went really well.
That was the only society tour that actually happened this year, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, so.
And because of the COVID restrictions, we didn't get to enter as many lighthouses. There hadn't been those restrictions, so there was a downside there, but.
Well, the members the people who travel on this tour were dying to get out and do something. So this was, at least we got to operate one tour this year, which is nice. Yeah.
So we have a couple of people with their hands raised, including our friend Darlene Chisholm. So,
Hey, Darlene.
whoops. Darlene, you should be able to speak now.
Okay. When we were at Cape Campbell, I'd asked the lady there, what was it like to be in an earthquake? I had no idea whatsoever. And she said at the last earthquake, it occurred in the middle of the night. And it woke up the house shaking, and the ceiling in the bedroom fell on her head. It was just, I mean, her town and her village, her house was destroyed. Her son's house was destroyed. And I mean, it's just incredible. I couldn't imagine anything like it.
Yeah, and New Zealand, unfortunately, does live on that type of earthquake area. Ralph Eshelman could probably explain it a lot better. He did a lot of that on the tour. He told us about what kind of conditions the New Zealand was with the rock formations, the plates, etc. But yeah, they're prone to earthquakes.
Well, and you have to also remember that New Zealand is still growing. It's still having volcanoes erupt, and new land is being added to the total land mass still. So it's unlike many of the other countries that are done, that have stagnated. It's still going on.
Charlie Wiapapa in the chat says, Aoraki Mount Cook, home to the darkest skies in the world. That's interesting. Why would that be? Why would there be the darkest skies in the world?
There was a volcano that exploded in that area, if I'm not mistaken.
So Terry in the room has raised her hand, and you can go ahead, Terry.
Okay. I don't.
There you
hear
are.
Me?
Yeah. Yes, we do. Yes.
Okay. I just think it was a wonderful trip. I had a wonderful time, and what I got out of New Zealand was it was the most ecologically perfect place they've ever been when it came to how they cared about their country. You know, they just it was just pristine everywhere you went, and I just love that. And I'm so happy we got to go on the trip, and I can't wait to go on another one.
Yes. Yeah.
Sorry.
Thank you, Terry.
That was good.
Yeah, oh, that's great. Thank you. Yeah, just, you know, I think we're all envious of those of you who went on this tour. Let's see, Jeff, am I missing anything? Oh, here's a good question. Why don't you read this last question in the chat, Jeff?
Where are the Hobbit homes located?
They're in the North Island in Matamata. We showed that on that tour
Can you stay in
portion.
them, or are they just for like are they like a museum?
No, you can go. They've got a tour all set up where you get on a bus and you walk around and you get to see the little Hobbit hole. None of them are like in the movies. They're just a round door in the side of a mountain. They don't have any depths to them.
You can't stay in them. They're not like little vacation rentals or anything.
No, and they were they're set pieces, so everything was scaled down in size, the things that they have. The only place that was full size was the Green Dragon, which was the tavern that was shown, and we went there and got to get a brew and see interesting toilets. They still had the chain that you got to pull in order to flush, and it was very nice woodwork there for that particular one.
We've had a lot of interesting commodes on Lighthouse Society tours.
Yeah.
Yes, including a lighthouse that was turned into a commode.
Really? I'm really curious about that. Where is that?
That was on the Canadian side of Lake Erie. I forgot the exact location, but
Yeah, but it was one of those lighthouses.
Well,
It was in like a mobile home park. The local people converted the lighthouse into an outhouse for toilets, and we weren't supposed to get onto the property. We got no permission, but of course the whole bus rushed to the lighthouse. Everybody started coming out of their mobile homes saying, "What are these crazy people looking at our bathroom?"
Oh, that is hilarious. I feel like I want to do a segment on the podcast about that one.
yeah, well, I'll put together a retrospective on our Lake Erie tour.
You've heard, Peggy's Cove is the post office. This is the lighthouse.
Yeah,
The only outhouse at the lighthouse.
Right. There's the one on Lake Tahoe that looks like an outhouse. That's actually a navigational light.
That's right.
Everybody thinks it's an outhouse. That's a little different. So let's see. I'm not seeing any other questions. By the way, I saw a 4D movie. It was quite an experience at the New York Aquarium in Coney Island. So I have an idea what you were talking about with the 4D movie. We had the water was sprayed on us, and I think wind was blown on us in parts. And if I remember right, even bubbles came out of something like soap bubbles came out of some kind of.
We got fake snow blown at us.
Okay. It's a very strange experience. I want to mention that I'm doing a Zoom presentation that's coming Thursday evening for Save Our Sound. It's a presentation on Nantucket Sound lighthouses, and it's part of like a digital conference they're having. And if you go to saveoursound.org, saveoursound.org, and click on events, you can register for that event, and it's free. That'll be Thursday evening at 6, and I'll be doing a presentation. It'll be about 40 minutes long on Nantucket Sound lighthouses in Massachusetts. So you might want to check that out.
And our next one's going to be 2 weeks from today, and it's going to be Skip's trip to Southern England and the Eddystone Lighthouse, which was an adventure all in itself.
Wow, I am really looking forward to that. Somebody asked in the chat, what is the website for Save Our Sound? Again, it's saveoursound.org, saveoursound.org. And again, click on events and you'll see the information about the Thursday evening's presentation that I'm doing. You can register in advance for that for free. So if there are no other questions or comments, either verbally or in the chat, I think we can probably wrap things up. Anything, Margie and Cassandra, anything you'd like
Thanks
to?
for joining us, guys. We really enjoyed sharing our trip with you all. And hi to those that were on the trip.
It's nice to see you all
Nice
again.
to see you. You're looking great.
And thank you, Margie and Cassandra, for doing this. And thank you, Jeremy, for being such a good host.
Yes.
Thank you all so much. Thanks for coming today. We'll see you again in a couple of weeks. Hope to see some of you on Thursday too. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.